Hello friends! I'm here to tell you a relaxing, meaningful story which lead you to sleep with sweet dreams. Let's start our new story from Chapter 1. Chapter 1. The Village of Dreams where lanterns whisper and stars listen. Nestled in the arms of a velvet green valley where the trees swayed like lullabies and the rivers sang in silver tones, there was a village called Liora, a place where time walked slowly and dreams were more than just things that visit in the night. Every house in Liora had a garden of light, not with flowers, though they had those too, but with floating lanterns, hundreds of them each glowing softly like they carried the warmth of a whispered memory. The villagers believed that every lantern held a feeling, a wish or a story that was waiting to rise into the stars. And in the heart of it all lived Elara. Elara was not like the other villagers. She had hair the color of starlight and eyes so deep and calm they seemed to carry the hush of midnight. She was the village's dream weaver, a quiet soul who held the delicate task of collecting and shaping the dreams of the people into lanterns. Each night, just as the first stars blinked into the sky, Elara lit her lanterns and sent them floating into the heavens, where they would become dreams for the sleepers below. She lived in a round cottage by the edge of the Moonmirror Lake, a place so still that it reflected the sky perfectly. Her home smelled of lavender, beeswax, and old stories. Inside were shelves stacked with jars of memory dust, bundles of dried night-blooming herbs, and books bound in moonleaf paper. Everything in her home felt hushed like it belonged in a dream. The evening ritual each evening followed a ritual. At twilight, when the sun dipped below the hills and the sky turned that soft indigo that only happens once a day, Elara would wrap herself in her shawl made from cloud thread and step into her garden. She walked barefoot on the moss-covered stones, feeling the pulse of the earth below. The lanterns, sensing her presence, stirred gently in the air like sleeping fireflies waking from a nap. One by one, she touched each lantern, whispering a word, a name, a hope, or a forgotten sorrow into it. The lanterns would shimmer and glow brighter, accepting the feeling and storing it safely inside their glass. Asleep well, Tomas, she'd whisper to a blue lantern. Let go, Nella, she'd breathe into a pink one. You are loved, old Marn, she'd murmur to a gold one barely flickering. Once all the lanterns were ready, Elara would walk to the lakeside. There she'd play her ocarina, a delicate little flute carved from the bone of a dreamfish. The melody was soft, ancient, and full of longing. And as the music floated into the night, the lanterns began to rise, slowly at first, then dancing gently on invisible currents. They glowed like sleepy stars and drifted upward into the night sky. From far away, travelers often paused and stared at the sky over Liora, wondering why the stars seemed so close, so alive. A village wrapped in peace, the people of Liora adored Elara, though they did not disturb her much. They called her the keeper of quiet. Her presence was calming and her voice was soft, like rain on leaves. She moved like a breeze and listened more than she spoke. The villagers lived simple, kind lives. There was Garen, the baker, whose sourdough loaves always smelled like home. Nella, the healer, who used laughter and lemon balm to mend both bruises and broken hearts. Tomas, the bellmaker, whose shop sang at every breeze with hundreds of tiny chimes. And old Marn, who sat by the fountain and told stories he half remembered and half made up. In Liora, no one hurried. Children grew up gently. Elders aged with grace. There was no crime, no war, and very little sorrow. Only the quiet ache of forgotten dreams and passing time. But even in a village so full of peace, there were cracks. Cracks only a dreamweaver could see. The first dim star one night, as Elara lit her lanterns and sang to the sky, she noticed something strange. A single lantern, one made for a child named Rin, flickered and pulsed with a restless, uneven light. It trembled in her hand, unsure. Elara paused, frowning gently. She touched the lantern again, listening closely. She heard something, not quite a dream, more like a shadow, a sorrow that hadn't been spoken aloud. That night, as the lanterns drifted upward, she noticed it again. A star, just one, dimmed as the lanterns reached it. Not flickered, dimmed, as if something in the sky had sighed and turned away. Elara stood by the lake for a long time after the last lantern had disappeared. The moon reflected in the water, but it felt distant somehow, like a friend forgetting your name. The next morning, she walked through the village in silence, listening to the dreams as they lingered in the air. And though everyone smiled and laughed and went about their day, she could feel it. a weight in their steps, a hush beneath their voices. The dreams had begun to carry more than wishes. They carried longing, regret, and in some fear, not loud enough to wake someone in the night, but just loud enough to trouble the stars. The dream with no color that evening, as Elara reached into her jar of memory dust to begin her ritual, she found something she had never seen before. A dream with no color. It pulsed faintly, not gray, not white, just blank. She held it in her hand, confused. Dreams always carried a hue. Joy was golden, grief was deep violet, hope was green, even nightmares had their dark scarlet tinge. But this? It was like someone had dreamed of nothing at all. She closed her eyes and tried to listen to it. A faint voice echoed like someone very far away. I don't know what I want anymore. Elara's breath caught. She placed the colorless dream into a lantern and it floated for a moment, then fell to the ground, unable to rise. That night, Elara didn't send all the lanterns. She sat by the lake until the stars faded into dawn, cradling the blank lantern in her lap, listening to its silence. The whisper from the sky the following night, the sky was even dimmer. 2 stars did not light. As she played her ocarina, the wind shifted. It carried something strange, a whisper, none of the villagers, none of the forest. It came from above. Elara, she stopped playing. Elara, the dreams are forgetting. Who are you? She whispered to the sky, but the voice was already gone, lost in the wind. She looked up at the dim stars and felt something tighten in her chest. Something was changing, something old, something she had once heard in stories. Chapter 2. The fractured sky where dreams slipped through cracks in the light. The next morning, Elara sat quietly on the edge of her bed, her feet resting on the smooth, cool wooden floor. The soft hush of the lake lapping outside was usually a comfort, but not today. The lantern from the night before, the one with the colorless dream, rested on the windowsill. It hadn't moved, it hadn't flickered, it hadn't spoken again. Elara looked at it with furrowed brows, then glanced outside. Clouds, that was rare. The sky above Liora was nearly always clear, save for misty veils in the early dawn or passing silks of evening fog. But these clouds were heavy like low-lying bruises in the sky. They pressed down as if trying to smother something. And the strangest thing of all, the stars were still faintly visible in daylight, like tired night lights refusing to turn off. The elders warning Elara rarely visited the village council, but that day she made her way there. The council gathered under the great wishing tree in the center of the village. The tree was ancient, with silver bark and golden leaves that didn't fall even in winter. Old Marn was there, wrapped in his rust-red shawl. His eyes, milky with age, lit up when he saw Elara approaching. Elara, he rasped, you bring the night with you. She knelt beside him. Have the dreams. Change for you too. Marn nodded slowly. I dreamed I was sitting at the edge of the stars, and they were whispering apologies. She asked, and then they began to break. Elara sat back on her heels. She shared what she had seen, the dim stars, the whisper in the wind, the blank dream that wouldn't rise. Marn looked down for a long time. We haven't spoken of it in years, he said softly, but my grandmother once told me a story about a place between dreams, a place called the Fracture. Fracture? He nodded, a rift in the dreaming sky. A wound, they said, where lost dreams fall through when they are not seen, not felt, not remembered. A place full of forgotten wishes and fading souls. Is it real? It's as real as sorrow, Marn said. It only shows itself when enough hearts begin to lose their dreaming light. And the Dreamway opens that night. Elara lit only a few lanterns. Most refused to glow. Some whimpered. One cracked. It was like the dreams themselves were breaking apart before they could form. She sat by the lake, ocarina in hand, but she didn't play it. She just listened. The wind was restless, brushing her hair across her cheeks like a parent worried for a child. The trees rustled low lullabies. The lanterns floated uncertainly in their chords. And then she heard the voice again. Elara! I'm here, she said softly, and the Dreamway is opening. The clouds parted in a single beam. A silver light struck the water of the Moon Mirror Lake. Slowly, like breath forming on glass, the surface shimmered not with moonlight, but with a ripple of glowing paths. A bridge of light formed across the lake, but it did not reflect anything above. Instead, it showed a world beneath, a shifting realm of colors, of floating memories, of unfinished dreams. This was the Dreamway. Elara stepped onto the light bridge, and Entering the Dreamway the moment her foot touched the silver path, the world changed. No longer was she in the cool, night-shrouded village. Now she walked above a sky that swirled with colors that had no name. Blue like forgotten lullabies, gold like the warmth of holding someone's hand, violet like a tear shed in gratitude. All around her floated fragments of dreams. A carousel spinning slowly in a sea of stars. A child running through a candy field, barefoot giggling. A window with curtains blowing in a breeze that smelled like the past. As Elara walked, these fragments whispered, "Oh, don't forget me. I used to believe, but why did you stop wishing?" Her heart ached, and then out of the shifting mist a figure approached. The first dream spirit, it was not a person, not quite. It was tall and graceful, robed in flowing twilight, and its face was a smooth surface, like the surface of a pond, ever shifting, reflecting images of the dreams passing around it. "I am Kale, guardian of the dream flow," it said in a voice like bells heard underwater. Elara bowed slightly. "I am Elara, keeper of dreams from the village of Liora." Kale nodded. "We have felt the fading. The dreams are growing thin. What is happening?" she asked. "Why are the stars dimming?" Kale looked to the sky above them. Even here in this sacred place, stars flickered and went out like old candles. "The fracture has opened," Kale said. "But once every 100 generations, when sorrow outweighs hope in too many hearts, the Dreamway weakens and dreams slip through into the hollow sky." "The hollow sky?" "A realm where unspoken feelings go, where dreams unshared and grief unheld gather like dust. It is not meant to hold so many. It begins to collapse under the weight. That collapse reaches even the stars." Elara shivered. "Can it be healed?" Kale studied her. "Only a weaver with a true heart and a clear memory can pass beyond the edge. Only she who listens may restore what has been forgotten." The lantern of truth Kale handed Elara, a single lantern. It was unlike any she had ever seen. It was made of memory glass, thin and delicate, swirling with ever-changing images. And at its center was a flame, small but steady. "This is the lantern of truth," Kale said. "It will guide you to the place where the fracture begins. But beware, Elara, it does not burn with comfort. It shows what must be seen even when it hurts." Elara took it in her hands. The flame pulsed warmly, and for a brief moment she saw an image within the lantern. A child sitting alone in the rain, herself, a memory she had forgotten. The path beyond dreams, the Dreamway trembled. Cracks appeared in the light bridge. The stars above flickered more urgently. "Elara," Kale said, "you must go deeper, into the forest of forgotten whispers. There the truth will wait." She nodded. And with the lantern of truth held close, she stepped beyond the Dreamway into a place even the spirits dared not tread. Chapter 3. The forest of forgotten whispers, where echoes linger and shadows remember. The world shifted again. As Elara stepped beyond the edge of the Dreamway, the silver light beneath her feet dissolved into mist, and the sky above her melted into soft folds of violet dusk. She found herself standing at the threshold of a forest unlike any other, one that breathed in silence and exhaled memory. It was neither dark nor bright. The light within this forest came from the trees themselves. Their trunks glowed faintly, not with fire, but with remembering. Each branch shimmered with the weight of something lost, a name, a song, a promise. Too old to be recalled clearly, too important to fully disappear. This was the forest of forgotten whispers, the lantern in Elara's hands, the lantern of truth, pulsed with a steady rhythm. It cast no shadow, only clarity. With each step she took, the flame inside showed her pieces of herself. All memories beneath the leaves as she walked, the forest stirred. Leaves whispered in voices she almost knew. One tree exhaled the scent of her father's old cloak, worn leather, candle smoke, and warm bread. Another's bark shimmered with the lullabies her mother hummed when Elara was still small enough to fit in her arms. She paused beneath a willow, and its drooping branches brushed her shoulders like fingers. From within its roots, a memory rose like mist. She saw a younger version of herself, sitting alone in a field. The other village children played in the distance. She had tried to join them once, but they had laughed when her lantern glowed a strange silver instead of gold. "You're different," Tess said. Too quiet, too strange." So she had stopped asking to play. Elara watched the memory play out silently. The flame in the lantern flickered, not with sorrow but with understanding. "I forgive you," she whispered to the old pain. The tree shivered, its bark glowed brighter, and the path ahead cleared a little more. The whispers speak as she moved deeper into the forest. The whispers grew louder, but never harsh. They were not haunting voices. They were simply forgotten ones. Words once spoken in passing, songs half finished, wishes made and never repeated. "Hey, come back," said one breeze. "I missed you," murmured a falling leaf. "Did you mean it?" a root asked. Each voice tugged gently at her memories. Suddenly a child's laugh rang through the trees, familiar and musical. She turned toward it. There, not far from the path, stood a figure, small, barefoot, with starlight in her hair. It was herself at age 6. The child version of Elara waved. "Do you remember me?" the girl asked, voice echoing like wind chimes. Elara nodded slowly. "You forgot me for a long time," the girl said, "but I never left. I stayed here." Waiting, Elara knelt. "I was afraid of being lonely," she nodded. The little girl took her hand. "You're not alone now." And then with a shimmer of light, the child faded, but in her place bloomed a white flower at Elara's feet, a bloom of memory. Elara picked it and placed it inside the lantern. The flame grew brighter, the spirit of the first lantern deeper still. She walked until the forest gave way to a glade, wide, circular, with a still pond in its center. Floating above the pond was a great ancient lantern, larger than a cottage, suspended in air by no visible force. Its glass was cracked. The flame within it sputtered weakly. This was the first lantern, the source from which all others had been kindled long before Elara was born. And beneath it stood a figure cloaked in dark starlight, not threatening, not unkind, just tired. "I've waited for you," said the figure. "Elara, Dreamweaver of Liora, who are you?" she asked softly. "I'm the Rememberer, guardian of the first flame. I keep the truth of dreams. I also carry their weight." Elara approached, the lantern in her hands flickering warmly. "Other dreams are falling," she said. "Yes, because too many hearts have stopped believing they matter." Can I stop it?" The Rememberer stepped aside and pointed toward the first lantern. "You must give it what it's lost." Elara looked up. The cracks in the glass shimmered like old wounds. "What did it lose?" The Rememberer touched her shoulder gently. "But not just hope for others' hope." And in that moment, the truth in the lantern showed her a final vision, one she had hidden away even from herself. The forgotten choice she saw herself years ago, standing at the edge of the lake, an invitation to leave Liora clenched in her hand. A letter from a distant land, a place of cities and wonders and possibilities. She had wanted to go, she had dreamed of it, but she had looked at the sky above her village and stayed because she was afraid, not of failing, but of being forgotten. That dream, the one where she left, had withered inside her, and though she had woven lanterns for everyone else's dreams, she had never made one for her own. She had never truly believed she deserved to dream. The realization hit her like rain after drought. She fell to her knees before the first lantern and held out the bloom of memory. "I'm sorry," she whispered to herself. Then with trembling hands, she took the flame from her lantern, the one that held truth, forgiveness, and her inner child, and placed it into the broken lantern above the pond. The lantern burns again. The first lantern shuddered. The cracks in its glass pulsed with light, then slowly mended. The flame inside surged to life, soft at first, then growing until the entire glade shimmered with golden blue fire. Trees whispered, the pond shimmered with stars, and the whispers in the forest turned to songs. The Rememberer smiled. "You have restored what was lost." And then everything grew still. The trees began to vanish into mist. The flame from the first lantern leapt into the sky, soaring toward the heavens like a comet. And Elara, holding nothing but silence in her hands, closed her eyes and stepped into the light. Chapter 4. The healing light where the dreamer returns and the stars remember. Light. It was all around her, soft as velvet, warm as a hug in the middle of winter. Elara floated in it, not falling, not rising, just held, cradled like a lullaby. The voices of the forest were gone now. So too were the cracks in the stars, the hollow winds, the sorrowed dreams. Here in this gentle sea of gold and silver and memory, Elara felt whole. Her hands no longer clutched the lantern of truth. It had dissolved into her, become part of her heartbeat, her breath, her being. She was no longer just Elara the lantern weaver. She was Elara, the Rememberer of light. The return when her eyes opened again, she stood on the shore of Moonmere Lake. It was early morning. The sky above Liora was soft pink, embroidered with stars that hadn't quite let go of the night. The lanterns strung across the village swayed gently, not from wind, but from breath. They were awake and glowing brighter than she had ever seen. Villagers slowly gathered outside their cottages, drawn by the light. Children rubbed their eyes and gasped. Elders leaned on walking sticks and wept. The lanterns that had once only flickered now glowed like suns in miniature. And floating above them all, high in the dawn sky, was the first lantern, fully healed, radiant, and watching. A village remembers old Marn found her first. He touched her shoulder gently and looked into her eyes, and in them he saw the girl she had once been and the woman she had become. "You brought it back," he whispered. "The dreaming." Elara smiled. "And not just me. All of us. I just remembered first." One by one, villagers came to her. Some brought faded lanterns, which now burst into renewed light at her touch. Some brought tears, others brought songs. And all brought stories of dreams they had stopped chasing, wishes they had silenced, or memories they thought too small to matter. Together they wove new lanterns, not just from thread and flame, but from hope. And for the first time in many, many years, Liora laughed, not loud or rowdy, but deep. Joyful, true. The lantern for herself that evening as the village celebrated under a sky painted with stars and memory. Elara returned to her quiet cottage. She sat by the lake, and there, with silver string and glass forged from truth, she made one final lantern. This one was for herself. She filled it with the dreams she had hidden, of traveling beyond Liora, of singing before strangers, of finding love, even if it came softly and late, of forgiving herself. The flame inside flickered shyly at first, but then it grew steady, like a heartbeat finally trusting its own rhythm. She hung it above her door, and it never dimmed. Years later, time passed. Elara grew older, though her spirit stayed light. She traveled beyond the lake once, then twice, and then often. She returned always with stories and songs, and each time the village waited with open arms. Children grew up learning to weave lanterns, not just for fun, but as a way to remember who they were. No one forgot their dreams anymore, even the small ones, especially the small ones. And high above Liora, the first lantern still floated, a quiet star, a reminder. The night of 1,000 lights one evening, long after Elara's hair had turned to silver and her hands to parchment, she stood once more at the lake's edge. It was the night of 1,000 lights, an old tradition reborn. Every villager stood along the water with their lanterns in hand. And when Elara raised hers, they all let theirs go. The lake filled with floating dreams. Colors swirled across the surface. Memories, hopes, farewells, beginnings. And for one brief, perfect moment, the stars above and the lanterns below were one. Elara looked up and smiled. Not because she had saved the dreaming, but because she knew now, dreams were never lost, only waiting. Good night, dear friends. Hope you will sleep before the end of story.